All right, let's kick it off. Thanks everyone for joining. We got another webinar. Got the March presentation today. Dr. Brandon Olson is going to be presenting today. So thank you for joining. It's a nice day. It's warm out, at least where I'm at here in the cities, and spring looks to be in bloom, which with the birds chirping and sun shining, it also signals the start of grad school application season, which is probably a more exciting time of year for me than most humans. But here at the Stender School, who puts on these webinars, the cool thing about our programs is, and we don't have dozens of programs, we got a few, but they're good and they cover all different bases. So programs like our project management cert, MBA, data analytics, well, they can certainly get you on track to pursue routes and careers in those specific lines of work. They're good for anybody. The tools and skill sets that we're using in these programs deal with numbers, systems, but also people. So there's a lot of value for really anyone in any line of work with whatever they're trying to do. So, we definitely appreciate you sharing these programs with your colleagues and your friends and just helping us get the word out there. So we appreciate you helping us out with that. So thank you in advance. This will be recorded, so we'll get you the recording and we'll send you stuff about the Stender School programs as well when we're done. And if you have any questions today or going forward, Brandon and I are here to help you or anyone that you know look into the school and discuss some of this a little further. So with that, I'll kick it over to Brandon.
All right, thanks, Joe. So I'm going to share my screen here and we'll get started here. All right. All right, so today's topic, we're going to talk about the project life cycle of why. And I guess this is kind of stems from some of the work I do in the field where I'm looking at better measures of project success. And part of this is understanding why we do projects. And I guess that's what the topic is around here today. So, oops. Sorry about that. There we go. Okay, so the learning outcomes for our today's presentation is I want you all to be able to identify and articulate the true project purpose. And we'll get to that. I want you to recognize the value contributions projects make and evaluate project performance using proper KPIs and improve project practices by seeking repeatable conditions. And the topics that we're going to cover, we're going to define project success, the project purposes, and then go through the whys for each of the process groups in project management and look at the question of why and what we should be asking in each of those phases. So we're going to begin by the project purpose. So keeping in mind the definition of a project, it's a temporary endeavor undertaken to create something unique, product, service, or result. And the temporary nature of projects indicates that there's a beginning and an end to the project work or phase of the project work. Projects can stand alone or be part of a program or portfolio. But one of the key concepts here is that what we're doing, we're producing some type of product, service, or a result. So there's some type of outcome or output from our projects. And that's going to be key here. So our project result really is we have our project scope and the requirements, and together with our project effort, that's what we're doing to produce our deliverables. That's the output from our project. And really, organizations are then using those deliverables to produce some type of change. So we do projects to create change. So change could be new products or services. It could be increased efficiency in the organization. It could be adopting a new system, a new process, bringing in new organizations. So there could be some type of, but the result is some type of change. So we're doing the project for a purpose, and that's that change. But projects are also an investment. So that investment could include the financial resources, the time resources. So there's so much time in a year The organizations needs to invest that time into something. And of course, the resources, the people resources and equipment resources of the organization. Those are all investments that are taken in order to be able to produce some type of benefits for the organization. And it's that benefits, that's what we're really going to focus in on this presentation, is the benefits that we produce from our project. So projects are investments. So we have an investment in those resources, and we're going to produce some type of benefit. But the key here is those benefits should exceed our investment. That's why we call it an investment. We're going to spend so much of our time, money, and resources, but expect to have some type of benefit that is greater than that investment. That's why we're going to put this investment in the project. So keep in mind that organizations do have limited resources, whether they're going to be time, people, and financial resources. So we're really looking at what we use as project portfolio management in order to determine projects that we should fund. So most organizations can have a lot more projects that they can actually pursue. So we use portfolio management as a way to determine those projects that we should pursue, given the expected or anticipated benefits. So what we're going to do is we're going to select a set of projects that are going to produce the greatest benefit for the organization. So that's really, we're using these limited resources to produce the greatest benefit for the organization. So for example, if we have looking at a 3-year window, that's 36 months. If we have $4.2 million to invest and up to 245 FTEs that can work towards these on these projects, that's really the resources that we have available in that 3-year window to put towards our projects. But we have a lot of project opportunities out there. So what we need to do is we need to figure out which of these project opportunities we're going to pursue. So that's where we take a look at those projects that are going to, or the set of projects that are going to produce the greatest value. So we're going to invest that $4.2 million, 245 FTEs over that 36 months. And we're going to look at what combination is going to produce the greatest value. So the greatest, most likely financial return on that investment. But we also consider is strategic alignment in how not only do these projects produce additional incremental value, but does that value, or do the projects also help us get to where we're trying to go? Is it aligned with our strategies? So those are kind of the main 2 criteria that we look at when evaluating what projects we should pursue. So if we have $4.2 million for this 3-year window, our portfolio is going to may indicate then that we're going to increase that investment of $4.2 million, and it's going to produce $40.2 million in value. So now we're increasing our value, but from that $4.2 million investment in that 3-year window. So that's the intent of our project portfolio. It's to produce some type of benefit to the organization. And the simplest way to look at benefit is just, we're just simplifying it here and taking a look at purely financial benefits. So we can see that we're increasing the value of the organization through these projects. So why do we do projects? Certainly to produce value, but we're going to do this to help make organizational change. So we're trying to make and foster change in the organization. We're going to do this project. These are going to be investments for future growth. We want to do projects so that we create a platform, so to speak, so that we can see incremental growth in the future. And of course, to realize our organizational strategies, to make our strategies take place, we carry out our changes. Our strategies are carried out through projects. So that's the reason why we're doing projects. Now, before we continue, I want to look at project success. And here's where traditional project management really fails. When we take a look at project success, we measure the success of a project by the scope, schedule, budget, the triple constraint that we operate under. So we're trying to manage our projects so that they finish on time, within budget, and deliver all the scope with the quality that's expected. So if we do finish our project on time, within budget, and produce all the scope, that's considered as a project. That project is considered a success. But this perspective, which is a very common perspective of projects, is very short-sighted, and we're missing out on a lot. So I want to use this as an example. Looking at this Northern Light Express, the proposed railway between the Twin Cities and Duluth. So let's use this as well, it may be a real project in the future, but we're going to use this as a fictitious example. So we want to deliver this new railway between St. Paul Union Depot and the Duluth Transportation Center. And let's say our timeline is going to start next fall and wrap up May 2028. And we have a $450 million budget to do so. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but just going to throw that out there. So this we're going to say is our project. So at the end of May 2028, we see that we completed the rail. Everything's operational. We've actually finished it a little early. We were expected to finish in May, but we finished in March. And our budget was $450 million. But in this rare occasion, we were able to finish under budget at $395 million. So we finished all the scope. We were early, so we were successful with our schedule and successful with our budget. So as a way of measuring most projects, we would say that this was a successful project. But if we take a look at the project, what we did along the way is we saw we needed to use special spikes, let's say. So these special spikes were going to help maintain speeds with the railway. But what we saw is that we're kind of getting close to our budget. We saw that we could have some cost savings with our project by using more traditional spikes. But the downside is rather than going 90 miles an hour, the train is only going to be able to go 35 miles an hour. But we're going to save money and we'll look good because we're going to produce our rail under budget, and it's probably going to be a little faster too. So that will help our schedule. So we made the decision to replace those gold spikes with traditional spikes, and we can get the project done sooner and for less money. So that helped us become a project success. Now, of course, that was a mistake because what we did there is we were focused on our operational perspective of success. So we minimized our schedule and budget while maintaining our scope, and therefore we're operationally successful. But if we take a look at why we're doing that project, is we wanted to maximize ticket sales, produce revenue. We wanted to reduce congestion along the freeway, and also therefore reduce the maintenance costs, and also maybe increase tourism revenue between the two cities. But if we're seeing that a 35-mile-an-hour train is not going to drive as many ticket sales because it's much faster to drive now, or not to go at all, it's not going to produce those goals. So although our project was operationally successful, we are going to fail to produce our goals. So therefore, what we tried to do is take that $450 million and create some value that is much greater than $450 million. And we failed to do so because our product output, although it met the scope, it does not meet our goals. So we really need to reevaluate how we measure project success. And I'm using this fictitious example of showing that a successful project operationally may not produce the value that it's supposed to do. And that's a better measure of project success, or another dimension of project success. So with this operational emphasis of project success or project metrics of scope, schedule, budget, that's really producing some type of operational blinders, where it really focuses what our emphasis is on schedule and cost, reducing schedule, reducing costs, and that's affecting our decisions on the project. For example, using the different railroad spikes. So those operational blinders, because we're measured, we're focused on those operational success of scope, schedule, budget, is going to force us to make, or it's going to influence our decisions to focus on the way we're being measured. So those operational emphasis really produces operational blinders. And that could mean that we're going to be missing our goals. We could be building it now, fix it later, just to get it done on time, and making all these other shortcuts or different decisions that are really influenced based on how we're measuring our success for this project. So these operational blinders not only hurt our ability to reach our project goals, but are going to kind of force us to make some shortcuts so that we can still be considered a successful project. Now, what we need to do is take a look at this more holistically. So back in 2017, I developed this enhanced model for project success based on some work of several different researchers, where we're not taking a look at just project efficiency. Project efficiency is that operational measure of scope, schedule, budget. But we take a look at four other dimensions as well. Organizational success. So this would be the value proposition. How much value and strategic alignment is our project delivering? So what does this project do to help the organization? Customer impact is going to take a look at our customers, all stakeholders of our project, and does this help improve their view of the organization or help them positively? And so we're taking a look at the impact the project deliverables have on that group. Also, our internal project team. So as part of any project, it can be a benefit or a detriment to our project team. If it's a poorly planned project, teams having to work 80 hours a week, we're going to have higher turnover. We're going to have demotivated team members who are going to be kind of worn out for the next project. Also, if the project is planned sufficiently or planned well, the project team won't be worn out, and they'll also be developing skills that they can bring to the next project. So we can develop our team members as part of a project. So every time we have a project, our team members are going to get better at doing projects, but they're also going to be developing new skills that they can apply towards future projects. So project outcomes can also be the team development. And so we look at the impact the project had on the team. And then, of course, future preparation. How did this project now place us in a position to provide additional projects or additional benefits to the organization? So it's the placement of the organization after this project in preparing it for future success. So these are the more of a holistic perspective of a project success. So it's not just that operational scope, schedule, budget, but all these other impacts that project has to the organization. So taking a look at the purpose of the project, the operational perspective is what we're producing. This is going to be the newer enhanced products and services. So it's really focused on the product deliverables. What are we producing? And while I don't want to, that's still important, but that's not the entire picture. What we need to do is we need to ask why. Look at the projects from more strategic perspective. The project's there to fulfill a need, it had advanced the organization and position the organization for future success. So it's really focused rather than on project deliverables, it's focused on business goals. Because we can produce a very successful project that does not deliver all the scope, it delivers the most important part of the scope and advances the organization. So really, why is a very important question, and that's the topic for today's presentation. Before we get into it, I just want to point out that one of the whys is, why are we doing the project? There's three primary sources for projects: revenue, expense, and directive. So we're doing this project to either increase revenue for the organization, or we're going to do this project to reduce expenses. It could make us be more efficient, or find ways through like information to reduce better decision makings, therefore reducing organizational costs. Or a directive. We have to do this project to remain in business. We have to do this project remain in compliance, or to just continue operations in the organization. So sometimes we have to do it just because we need to stay in business. But those are really the three sources of projects. And when starting a project, it's important to understand which of these three sources is driving the project. Sometimes it's going to be more than one, but recognize, why are we doing this project? And this is the first question to ask. Where does this project fall? Is it revenue generation, expense reduction, or is it directive? And that's going to help you answer a lot of the questions of why throughout the project lifecycle. So speaking of project lifecycle, just wanted to kind of define this. So looking at the Project Management Institute's process groups is what I'm going to call the project lifecycle here. And that begins with project initiating, moving on to planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing. So we begin by defining the project. Then we go ahead and move on to plan the project. Then we execute the project while monitoring, seeing how things are going, making adjustments, controlling. and then closing out the project, wrapping things up and learning from our successes and failures of the project. Now, this is kind of identified here more as a waterfall approach, but we can do this in iterations in a more agile approach. So regardless of project management methodology, these are the high level steps that take place. So I'm going to use these different process groups. We're going to look at each of these process groups and the type of why questions we should be asking throughout the life cycle here. So going to start with project initiation. So in project initiation, what we're going to do is we're going to ask, why are we doing this project? So of course, we start off what type of project is this? Is this going to be revenue generation, expense reduction, a directive, or some combination of the three? We also have to take a look at what are the goals for the project. So what are we supposed to do that's going to benefit the organization? What are the organization's expectations for this project? That's also to help identify. So if we do this project initiation before complete organizational approval, this is how we're going to sell the project. If this takes place after the project has already been approved, then we're taking a look at, well, how did this project get approved? What are they expecting from us? So that's kind of looking at the goals of the project. So here we can see as part of project initiation, we're going to identify the success measures and the expectations for the project. So of course we have the scope, schedule, budget, the efficiency measure, that's a given. But here in the initiation phase, we're going to take a look at, well, what are the measures that we're going to use and expectations for how this project is going to contribute to the organization's success. Same for customer impact. How is this project going to influence customer impact? How is it going to influence our team impact? And how is this project going to help prepare us for the future? So these are other dimensions that we should, in the initiation phase, we should take a look at what is our expectations and how are we going to measure each of these different dimensions of our project. Also, we're getting to know the stakeholders, all the people that have an interest in the project. So we want to identify all the stakeholders and what they hope to gain from the project. So they have an interest in the project. So what are they hoping that the project's going to do for them? And we also want to take a look at how each of the stakeholders, how they hope to influence the project. So they have an interest. What do they hope to be able to ensure that gets done and use their influence in the project, so we can understand how they can help us by using that influence. And then also for each stakeholder, we should take a look at how can the stakeholder help make this project successful? How can we take advantage of our stakeholders' interest to help make this project successful? So the stakeholders are key in determining project success. It's not just the project manager, not just the project team, but all of our stakeholders all have an interest and all have an influence on the project success, especially when we're looking at more than just the operational efficiencies of scope, schedule, budget. But if we're taking a look at these other measures of success, our stakeholders play a key role in determining that level of success. So with project initiation, first question was, why are we doing this project? And that's going to be defined as part of the project charter that we produce at the end of project initiation. In that project charter, we should be identifying all the measures of project success, what our expectations or our goals are for that project, and that's going to be defined in the project charter. Also in the initiation phase, we can take a look at why is this stakeholder, for each of our stakeholders, why is this stakeholder interested in the project? And we're going to produce kind of the answer to that in our stakeholder analysis. We're going to take a look at our stakeholders and evaluate our stakeholders and their influence and interest in the project. So project initiating, we're going to be producing a project charter, and that's where we're going to be establishing our goals and documenting them. And we're going to use that project charter and the corresponding goals to communicate to the project team and all project stakeholders so that we're all aware and accountable for these project goals. So again, it's not just the project team, it's the entire set of stakeholders that are accountable for achieving these goals. In our stakeholder analysis, we're going to be looking at each role the different stakeholders have in the project and how they determine success, as well as their personal interests in the project. And then as part of this project charter in the initiating phase, we're going to be establishing our success measures. Efficiencies, those are our project constraints. Customers impact, organizational success, future preparation, and team impact. All those are going to be identified with target measures and then how we're going to measure them as well. All right, then moving on to planning. So now we've identified the project, what we're going to be doing. Now we're going to figure out how we're going to do it. So in the project planning, we're going to be, again, asking, why are we doing this project? That why are we doing this project is important because that's going to help us prioritize a value, not just what are we producing, but what are we producing and how it's going to help provide value to the organization. So those higher value contributing components of our project should have a higher priority. So maybe more of our resources or more of our time and priorities are going to be geared towards those higher value components of our project plan. And also when assessing risk, looking at what could go wrong or new opportunities that we can have, positive risk, not just taking a look at how it's going to affect our scope, schedule, budget, but in expanding our risk assessment to look at the value. How is this going to affect the value that we're providing to the organization? So when we identify risks and evaluate risk, it's not just risk of scope, schedule, budget, but it's also we're expanding that to include value as well, which is something that we don't do. So as a result of project planning, we're going to be basing our plans to look at not just operational efficiencies, but we're going to be taking a look at how we can plan this project so that it maximizes customer impact, organizational success, and future potential. Now, also, if we have a properly planned project that's not going to rely on 80 hours a week of work, that successful project efficiency is going to result in a positive team impact. So this is where we're going to, if we have it properly planned, we can address team impact by a proper project planning. All right, so now moving on to project execution. So project execution, this is where we're going to go ahead and execute that plan. So we're going to take, again, look at value-centric deliverables. So when we're going to, as we're executing our projects and evaluating maybe the quality of them or how they're working together, we're going to look at each of these deliverables and its contribution to the purpose of the project and the value it provides to the organization. And we might have to do some rework if we see while the product deliverable seems to be fine, good quality, it's going to miss the mark of providing the value to the organization. Or if we see ways to increase the value to the organization, we might be able to justify that rework by reproducing or modifying it to produce greater value. The other thing is change orders. So a project change order is a formal way to modify the scope of the project. So in the part of our project charter, we identify the scope. Here's all we're going to be doing for this project. Now, that scope typically changes as we start the project. Rarely do we finish a project with the same scope as what we started with. But recognizing, because of that triple constraint here, that as we change the scope of the project, it is going to require more time and most likely more resources as well. So that does influence all of our project variables. So what we do to officially respond or come up with new project constraints, scope, schedule, budget constraints, we do a change order, and that allows us to kind of reset the expectations. So a change order comes in, we want to add some additional functionality to the project. So therefore, we're going to, that's an increase in our scope. Therefore, we're going to have to increase our project budget to accommodate that, as well as maybe some additional timelines to accommodate that change as well. So, and these change orders then are the project manager works with the project sponsor to evaluate this change order to see if the project sponsor wants to pursue this change order or not. So we don't automatically modify the scope. We go through this change order process to officially reset our project variables. Now, typically this is just do we want to add this scope? Let's go ahead and add it, and we'll increase our budget and schedule. But what we need to do is we need to take a look at the cost of this change. So a project manager should work with the team to figure out how much more is this going to cost and how much longer is this going to take. And so when can we produce the deliverables from this change order? And that has to be included in evaluating the change order. So if a change order is, let's say, $75,000 change order, but we take a look at that, that's $75,000, that might increase the value of the project by another 200,000. So 75,000 producing a $200,000 return, that sounds like a good change order. Whereas some change order, let's say change orders, again, $75,000, but it's really going to provide an incremental value, maybe another $25,000. So in that case, that approving that change order results in a net loss of about $50,000. So it's important then to evaluate these change orders on the value perspective. Not just do we like the results of the change order, but what value does this, what incremental value are we going to see as a part of this change order? So that's a very effective way to then evaluate our change orders. So what is the change order providing to the project, and keeping in mind, why are we doing this project? Does this help us? Does this help contribute to our why? So in our project executing, that says planning, but that should say project executing. We're going to assess our deliverables against the success measures as they're produced. From the quality management perspective, we're going to take a look at the quality of the deliverables, but it's not just good, bad, is this a good deliverable or not, but also, does this help align with the project value? Does this deliverable produce incremental value for the organization? And if it doesn't, then maybe we'll send it back and rework it to get something that will produce the expected or greater than expected incremental value for the organization. Now, also project change management. So we're going to evaluate our change orders against all success measures, not just scope, schedule, budget, but what it does for organizational success, what it does for customer impact, what it does for future preparation and team development. So we're going to not just look at, we're going to look at this more holistically, more objectively, by including all these success measures as we evaluate change orders. And what happens is we revise our plans and our targets as a result of this approved change order. So it really is going to affect all KPIs. If we're going to be approving this change order and we see that it's providing incremental value, we're going to change our scope. We're going to be changing our schedule and our budget as a result. But now we're going to reset our other measures of success. The organizational value, we're going to see a higher organizational value, and we should identify that. So we have new targets for these other areas as well. And the communication management piece of executing. So as we communicate the project status to all of our stakeholders, it shouldn't just be, are we delivering the scope? Is it on time? Is it on budget? Those simple operational efficiency measures, but also how are we targeting, or how are we working towards those KPIs of organizational success? Are we on track to be able to produce the value that we're expecting to produce? That should now be part of our project communications. All right, so then monitoring and controlling our project. So again, we're taking a look at, why are we doing this project? So that status reporting, as I mentioned, we're going to take a look at value-based or value-centric status reporting. So we're looking at not just the operational efficiencies, but how are we doing in producing the value for the organization? Also, as issues come up, so problems come up, and we've identified some risk and addressing risk in the project, we're not taking a focus just on the issue with producing project deliverables, and the risk of future things may affect our project deliverables or our project schedule and budget, but also these issues and their impact to our value proposition, as well as the risk. How is this risk going to affect the project value? So when we are doing this, the status report, issue identification, risk evaluation, and risk planning, all that has to include the value part and not just focus on the operational efficiencies of scope, schedule, budget. Now, another thing is the monitoring and controlling. We're going to run into problems, and those typically identified through our risks. but or excuse me, our issues. But as we come across problems that the project manager or the project team is trying to solve, it's not just, well, let's solve this risk so we can move on. What we want to do is we want to be a little bit more proactive with this. So what we want to do is we want to ask, well, why did this problem occur? It's another why question. So why did it happen? So really, when we're trying to solve a problem, we want to understand, well, what happened? We want to understand how does it affect the project? And then we can work on a solution. But part of that, our question should be, well, why did it happen? And then what can we do to ensure that it doesn't happen again? So we're not only going to develop a solution to the problem, but we're also going to develop plans to prevent or at least mitigate future problems so that we don't see these problems occur or reduce the influence the problems have on the project. And again, it's not just the problems related to the operational efficiency, but also the problems related to the value proposition. So in the monitoring and controlling, we're going to be routinely measuring and evaluating our current anticipated project performance against all success measures. It's typically we are measuring this against our scope, schedule, budget measures, but we're going to take a look at all value propositions. And then we're going to, as part of the controlling, we're going to be introducing adjustments to be able to optimize project success measures. So we're going to be evaluating risk management and opportunities. We're going to find ways that we can increase the value if we do something different in the project. We're going to introduce incremental changes, and we're going to be doing this through proposing change orders. And as we run into issues or problems, we're going to be asking the what, how, and why. What happened? How does it affect the project? Why did it happen? So that we can prevent it from or mitigating our risks in the future. So those are the type of questions that we're going to be asking along the way. So now when we move on to project closing, we have some other questions, and this is really important here. But first, taking a look at, so as I expand what we measure for project success, it's not just project efficiency, which we can measure at the end of the project. It's very clear. When we finish the project, did we finish it on time? Did we produce everything we said we're going to produce? And were we able to stay under for our budget? So if we take a look at this x-axis, this is over time. And then y-axis is really the importance. So immediately after the project, what's important is to measure that operational efficiency. Over time, that operational efficiency becomes less as important as the organization starts adopting the deliverables. How efficient we were with the project becomes less important. Further down the timeline, that's when we can actually measure customer impact and team impact. And so that's going to be, that could be months later, weeks later. At that point, we can say, well, the results of this project, how did that affect our customers? How did the project experience affect our team? So do we have a positive influence on the customers? Are they able to work better? Are they happy with the deliverables? Our project team, are they still fresh? Have they developed some new skills, ready to take on more projects? So we can measure that, and that's going to come later on down the road, and that the importance of that fades over time. And then later on, further down the road in the timeline, that's when we can start seeing the results of our organization success. So we're not going to instantly see the value proposition or the value we're providing to the organization. That's going to come later on. So that could be months, that could even be years down the road where we're going to see the full influence of the project or the full contributions the project made to the organization. So we're going to measure those successes later on, and those will be important later on. That's not going to be something that's going to be important right after the project because it's too early. And then even further down the line, that's when we're going to see the future preparation and see how did this project help prepare us for future successes. So again, we have a lot of different measures of success. It's not all of these measures are not done right at the end of the project. It's going to take place over time. So in project closing, we can immediately evaluate the project efficiency like we typically do. A little bit later, we can do an assessment of the team impact. We can measure or capture new and enhanced capabilities, whether project capabilities or technical capabilities, maybe personal capabilities. but our project team is developing new skills that they can now apply to the future projects. So the organization is increasing its skill set. We can have some type of initial determination of customer impact. But what we're going to want to do, recognizing that we're not going to be able to measure customer impact right away, we're going to put together a plan for future measures so that in the future, we're going to measure that customer impact as well as team impact to ensure that the long-term adoption of the project deliverables took place and to measure their success, their satisfaction with these deliverables. Also, we're going to put together plans to measure and monitor organizational success. Again, that's something that we can't do right at the end of the project, but we want to be able to measure that in the future and also ensure that those incremental success, or the incremental value, that we are going to quantitatively measure that and associate that with our project. So later on, we can see, well, we did this project and it produced this type of value. And that's going to help us identify future projects and have a better way to value those projects through our portfolio management process. So we want to be able to measure that. But at the end of the project, we can't do it quite then. So we're going to plan on the time we're going to measure this and how we're going to go ahead and measure that. And then also find ways to ensure that that measurement is associated or attributed to the project. And then we're also going to have a process in place so that we can correlate future successes with this project effort. Again, how are we going to measure it? When are we going to measure it? And how can we make sure that that is viewed through the lens of this project deliverables so we can see how those project deliverables put us in a position for future success. So all these different success measures, while we cannot measure them right at the time of project closing, some of the steps we can do, though, is put plans in place so that they will be measured at the appropriate time. So part of project closing is where we do some reflection as well. So the project team or all the project stakeholders should be asking questions of why were we successful? So we can take a look at what went well, how did it affect the project, and why did it go well? So we can also ask the other side of what didn't go well and how did it affect the project and why did it not go well? So we're going to look at these, identify not just what went well, but also associate these positive or negative experiences and see how they affected the project. So we kind of understand cause and effect. And then the why did it go well or why didn't go well? Now we're going to take a look at, well, why did this happen? So that we can take a look at things that we can do to make sure it happens again or make sure that it doesn't happen again. So on the positive side, this why did it not go well? That's going to help us plan to recreate the conditions that supported this project success or these successes in the project. So how can we kind of recreate the success in the future projects? On the other side, we're going to be putting together plans to mitigate or avoid these conditions that were leading to the challenges that we saw in the project. So how can we ensure that we don't see these failures or see these challenges again in the future? What can we do differently in the project? So while the project is over, we want to learn from this project so that we can perform better in future projects. So wrapping things up here. So in summary, we need to identify and articulate the true purpose of the project. So not just what are we producing, but why are we producing these deliverables? But first, we have to understand the type of project. Is this a revenue generating project, expense reduction project, or is it a directive? We have established our project goals, so we should understand what we're trying to achieve from this project and the incremental value the project's going to provide to the organization. Also need to determine all the project value contributions. So we need to understand in all the different ways the project's going to benefit the organization. Certainly financially, that's with that organizational success, but also how is it going to affect our stakeholders? How are they going to benefit from this project? And of course, our team benefits. How does our team benefit from the project? Therefore, their benefits are going to contribute to future projects in the organization. And as well as the future preparation, making sure that we assess all the different ways in this project is going to help us for future success. And we're going to evaluate our project performance using our KPIs of really not just looking at did we address all the scope within budget, within schedule, but taking a look at all the proper KPIs. How we really should be measuring the success of this project and what those targets were. And then we're going to use those final reflections to improve our project practices. We're going to by seeking repeatable conditions. So we want to make plans so that we can more often realize the successes that we've had and avoid the challenges that we ran into. So we're going to put plans in place. And part of this then is maybe proper training for the organization for future project teams. Here's what we learned from this project. Here's what you can do to have those successes. Here's what you can do to avoid those challenges. So that the entire organization can grow from that project experience. All right, so with that, have some time for questions, if you have any. If you have some questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I can respond to them. So I guess while we wait to see if there's questions, just wanted to reiterate the the key takeaways from this is the operational efficiency, which is measuring the amount of scope that we delivered within the budget and our timelines being met. While those are still good measures, those are kind of the basic expectations of a project manager. Of course, we're going to do that. Of course, we're working towards that. The more important measures are how does the organization benefit from this project? So that's why we're really asking the why question throughout the project. When we first define the project, all the way through when we close the project, we should be asking those why questions. All right, one last call for questions. All right, so seeing none, then what I'll do, go ahead and we'll close down here then. So if you want a copy of this presentation, go ahead and use this QR code with your phone. That will bring you to my Google Docs page where you can download a PDF copy of this presentation. I'm also out on LinkedIn and Twitter, the IT Professor, either location if you want to connect with me. But I thank you for coming to today's webinar. We're going to have another one next month. That one is going to be on language models. One of my colleagues, Tom Gibbons, is going to be talking about large language models, such as ChatGPT. And so he'll have an interesting topic to talk about there. So I hope if you're interested, take a look at our website again, css.edu/professional development, and look for the webinars that we have coming up in the next couple months. I thank you for coming today, and I hope you were able to learn something and be able to apply this to your project practices. Thank you.